Milwaukee Bucks fans, welcome back to Bucks Latest presented by fanarch.com. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please consider liking, subscribing, turning on post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. So, the first couple of segments we're going to get into today, they're a little bit more experimental, maybe not too realistic, but they're good exercises to see what the Milwaukee Bucks can do going into this offseason prior to the 2025-26 season, where it's likely going to be a retooling period if Giannis were to return for both the immediate and long-term future. And he's given the indication in recent interviews in recent days and weeks that he would like to return to Milwaukee. He'd like to win a championship in Milwaukee, raise the Larry O'Brien Trophy for a second time as a Milwaukee Buck. So that's good to look forward to, but ESPN's team of writers and analysts, pretty notable ones, including Bobby Marks, Brian Windhorst, and more, came up with 8 different trade scenarios with regard to the Giannis trade saga, with some accomplishing the goal of building around him if he were to return for the immediate and foreseeable future, and they also go down the road of trading him, which again, it's just an exercise, not saying that Giannis is definitely going to get moved, or I think the possibility even stands anymore with all the latest things of him coming out and shutting down these rumors. But good exercises to see what the Bucks can do going into the offseason, because after the Luka trade, I'm not sure what's real, what's fake. You could have these incredible league-altering, mind-bending trades going down, and nobody's talking about it. So you never really know what to expect with the NBA offseason now. So anyways, we're going to get into this first 3-team trade proposal where I'm going to just mostly focus on the Bucks' return in this. They will get the Orlando Magic's Wendell Carter Jr. and Jet Howard, along with the Chicago Bulls' Ayo Dosunmu in a trade. They would let go of Pat Connaughton, who is getting ready to accept a $9 million, I believe, about player option. So getting rid of his money would be good. The Magic would also get Jalen Smith and Javon Carter, a 2031 first-round pick, and a 2032 first-round pick swap with Milwaukee. The Bulls would then receive Kyle Kuzma, Andre Jackson Jr., which would sting, and a 2031 second-round pick. Speaking for the Bucks' return, getting a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. to serve as the interim Brook Lopez replacement for next year, maybe the year after that, I don't really have much of a problem with it. Wendell Carter Jr. has proven to be a pretty impactful and productive player as a member of the Orlando Magic, and I wouldn't be upset with him coming in. Of course, he doesn't offer the same kind of three-point ability, floor spacing capabilities of a guy like Brook, as Brook is probably going to leave in free agency, accept an offer from a team like the Lakers, a team like the Warriors, so he can have one more shot at getting a second NBA championship ring. But just speaking solely on Wendell Carter, I think he's a productive guy that could make a difference for the Bucks going into next year. Ayo Dosunmu, he's become one of my favorite players in the NBA in general. I believe he's so composed, but he's also extremely explosive and athletic and agile. He's basically a veteran in a young guy's body, and I've just been enamored with his game ever since he came into the league. He's done some great things in Chicago, and I think he would again serve as a pretty good Kevin Porter Jr. replacement if he were to leave, a good Gary Trent Jr. replacement who you could give the green light to and see what he can do on a team with no Damian Lillard on it for either most of or all of next year. The one thing about this deal is that I would not want Jet Howard back from the Orlando Magic. I'm not a big Jet Howard guy. He's proven to be very inefficient throughout his 2 first seasons with the Magic. He was given a little bit more opportunity this year, but still just cannot shoot, cannot create anything, and he's just not very productive on any area of the court in general. Instead of Jet Howard, I would maybe take in a guy like Caleb Houston, who was a 40% three-point shooter last year. He definitely has some more upside than a guy like Jet Howard, but the Magic probably value him a little bit too much to get him in a deal like this. Like I said, giving up Andre Jackson to Chicago would sting because he's another guy that you could just kind of give the green light to, set up plays for, and again, see what he can contribute going into what should be a pretty unpredictable season for the Bucks if Giannis were to return. But who knows? He could end up being a huge part of their offense, huge part of their defense. He definitely has incredible two-way potential. He could impact both sides of the floor incredibly going into next year, going into the foreseeable future. So I'm not really sure if I'm a huge fan of this proposal, but this next one is definitely going to rub some people the wrong way. So Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Warriors rumors and trade proposals have been a thing for, I want to say, about a half decade, maybe up to 6 years now. I want to say since like 2019-ish. But in this trade proposal, in this massive 4-team swap with the Bucks, Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, and Dallas Mavericks, the Bucks would receive, for Giannis heading to the Warriors, Austin Reeves from the Lakers, and from the Warriors, Brandon Pajemski, Jonathan Kuminga via sign and trade, Trace Jackson Davis, Maxi Kleber from the Lakers, an expiring contract, and 3 first-round picks. The Lakers would get Draymond Green and Daniel Gafford, and the Mavs would get Gabe Vincent, a 2031 Lakers first-round pick, which could be very valuable, and a 2025 second-round pick in this year's draft, which is number 41 overall. Wow, if Giannis were to end up going to the Bay and the Bucks were left with this haul, I'm not necessarily too upset. Of course, it would sting to see a guy like Giannis suit up for another team, especially having the chance to immediately contend for another title in Golden State. Just losing him would completely shatter the city. But Austin Reeves, Brandon Pajemski, and Kuminga in this return, you can't really be upset with that on top of the first-round draft capital, because Austin Reeves, again, I like to keep saying this, you could give the green light to going into next year, see what he can do for you. He could blossom into an all-star if he does things correctly for the Milwaukee Bucks. Same thing with Kuminga. He maybe won't get it done in his first year, but he definitely has all-star potential going down the line. The Warriors themselves, their front office, their ownership, thinks that Brandon Pajemski is a future all-star as well, and you could see bits of it with his two-way ability. He's just a great grit and hustle guy. He's a pretty consistent three-point shooter, and he's growing into his own on offense, but his defense, his ability to draw charges, draw offensive fouls in general, that's where he's going to make his money in the future. And getting a guy like Pajemski too, he could be a tone setter for the future for the Bucks. He could come in and really change the culture. He could do a lot of positive things on both ends. Along with Kuminga, who has that potential. Austin Reeves, you could just let him go crazy. Maybe he'll score 26 a night. If he does it efficiently, that remains to be seen. But I'm not necessarily upset with this return if Giannis were to end up going to Golden State. It's a pretty massive haul for Giannis. You know, you could argue that maybe it's still not enough for a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who just earned his 7th straight All-NBA first-team selection this past year. But, you know, if you're going to get anything out of a deal like this, it seems like a pretty decent package. Not saying that Giannis Antetokounmpo has any chance at all of going to Golden State. Anyways, moving forward, speaking on this point, Doc Rivers made an appearance on the Bill Simmons podcast recently, and he talked about the Giannis trade rumors, specifically how he has made it clear, Giannis himself, that he wants to stay in Milwaukee, that he wants to raise another Larry O'Brien trophy in Milwaukee. And Doc said, and I quote, "I don't know how many more times Giannis has to say he wants to be a Buck and he wants to win a title with the Bucks, and it's so cool to me because it's not the way it's done anymore. But with certain guys, I don't think Steph Curry would ever leave Golden State ever, and I'm hoping obviously Giannis feels the same way. That's the way he's been so far, and it's been great. It's been awesome." I like to see Doc Rivers being this vocal about the Giannis trade rumors, and he's not really shying away from questions about Giannis, about his immediate future, as this whole thing keeps unfolding. But both Giannis, Doc Rivers, Bobby Portis, they seem to be slowly putting these rumors to bed with their recent quotes that they've given in interviews, saying that, number one, Bobby Portis coming out and saying that if Giannis were to make his way to a different team, that it would just be weird seeing Giannis in a Toronto Raptors jersey specifically. Of course, not just for how ridiculous that trade would be, but just seeing him in a different jersey as, you know, after he's been a pillar in Milwaukee, it would undeniably be so hard to get used to, and probably I would never get used to it personally. Bobby Portis comes out and says things like that, and he kind of hints that he's going to return to Milwaukee as well. Doc Rivers comes out and says that, you know, it's needless, all of this Giannis trade stuff. He's going to come back. He's said that himself. He doesn't really seem fazed by all the outside noise. He maybe started up a little stir with the whole trade request thing, but it's all for naught. Like, it seems he's coming back to Milwaukee. I like how Doc Rivers is just being so forthcoming about this kind of thing, and talking about this kind of thing on a show as as Giannis prepares for next season, for the foreseeable future, as he'll likely remain a Buck. And last but not least, I just wanted to mention that Fansided's Dalton Sell, he's a very talented writer. He wrote an awesome article earlier this morning speaking on the Bucks' lack of focus in general when it comes to actually developing their top prospects and guys that they take in the draft, and players that could be a large part of their future rotation. And in this article, he spoke specifically on Tyler Smith and Andre Jackson Jr., two guys that you could argue deserved a little bit more burn. Of course, Andre Jackson Jr. did get it, but Tyler Smith could have, gotten his feet wet a little bit. And he said, and I quote, "These players are all basically unknown enigmas," again, when it comes to Tyler Smith and Andre Jackson Jr. "When the Milwaukee Bucks are spending valuable draft capital on them and then not developing them, it stings. No matter who is on the team, Rivers must find a way to incorporate youth and not keep them on such a short leash. The days of the Milwaukee Bucks adding veterans for the sake of name brand players are over. In today's NBA, you need youth. Tyler Smith can give them that. Andre Jackson Jr. can give them that. Perhaps who they take 47th overall in the upcoming draft can give them that. With the NBA draft getting closer and closer on June 25th, the Bucks have been rumored to think about taking guys like VCU's Max Shulga, guys like Mark Sears, Dane Danger, and the larger question, the overarching question remains, will the Milwaukee Bucks actually prioritize whatever guy they draft with the number 47 overall pick? Of course, getting a late second round pick or middle of the second round pick and actually throwing that guy into the lineup and developing him to become an essential piece of the lineup, it's unlikely for all teams in the NBA. But it's a pretty deep draft class this year. There's going to be guys like Mark Sears who have undeniable talent scoring the ball, and Milwaukee could give him a fair shot at either getting on the G League team or working his way up through the G League, making the main roster, and becoming an integral piece of a future competitive team. But if the Bucks don't even give him a shot, if the Bucks don't even give him about 10 minutes a game to start, and again, to get his feet wet, to just get familiar with the Bucks system and playing in the NBA, what good is it going to do if they end up taking somebody number 47 overall? If they do take anybody, I personally wanted a guy to be a guy that's a little bit more experienced, that has played potentially maybe 3-4 years in college, that again just has experience in big time situations. And Mark Sears is definitely that guy. I know I'm focusing a lot on Mark Sears, but for a guy like that, I believe the Milwaukee Bucks should be prioritizing these guys heading into next year, when it's basically all but confirmed that it's going to be a gap year, that they're going to be assessing their different players on their, different guys that could potentially make an impact for the future. A guy like Mark Sears could be that guy. A guy like Max Shulga could be that guy. But you got to give him a chance. That's the baseline. You have to actually throw your prospects out. You got to put them in the fire to begin, and hopefully they can make something out of it. But anyways, that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much for watching Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. I've been Dean Simon. Please again consider liking, subscribing, turning on post notifications to stay up to date with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Go Bucks.